Okay, boys, we're finally here to finish ranking the Are You Afraid of the Dark series.
Didn't we already, rank all the episodes?
Well, technically speaking, we ranked all the episodes in the original series and the revival series, but we still have to talk about the 2019 Reboot series. And that's what we'll be covering today in this very video.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Anyways, in 2019, Nickelodeon would go
No,
on to
wait, come on. Didn't you notice anything, different about me?
Oh, dude, I don't know. Did you get a haircut or something?
A haircut? I have a face now, and a new voice.
Oh, well, to be completely honest, dude, I don't pay much attention to you at all.
Screw you. When I get all the fan art, then you'll be sorry.
You're not gonna get any fan art just because you have a face now. He's not gonna get any fan art, right? I'm just gonna hop right into this one. So back in 2017, Paramount announced that they're going to be making an Are You Afraid of the Dark movie, which never actually came out. Instead, we got this reboot series 2 years later. It's not explicitly stated online, but I have reasons to believe that this original movie idea would later go on to get reworked into the first season of this reboot series. I mean, the movie was slated to come out in October of 2019, which is when the reboot series originally aired. But concerning this series with the build-up to release, there was a little bit of tension amongst the fans. I mean, taking a beloved 90s property and making it darker and more realistic oftentimes doesn't bode well. I mean, just look at the 2017 Power Rangers movie. It didn't have an outright negative reception, in fact I kinda like it, but it was certainly mixed, to say the least. Also, the director of that film would ironically go on to direct every episode in both Season 1 and Season 3 of the Are You Afraid of the Dark reboot show. So, needless to say, fans were skeptical upon release. However, the show kind of knocked it out of the park. I mean, evidently so. The show would go on to get 2 more seasons after Season 1. And speaking from my own experience after watching every single episode, the show is fucking awesome. I mean, Season 1 slaps, and Season 2 is a banger, and Season 3 is certainly there. I mean, it's fine. But breaking the mold from the prior incarnations of the show, this reboot series isn't an anthology series. Instead, it's an anthology series. No, wait.
Fucking dumbass.
What I mean by that is instead of every episode being a different and self-contained story, every season is a different and self-contained story. And every episode in these seasons follows one set of characters going through their own storyline. And this isn't a new concept by any means. I mean, American Horror Story is probably the best example of this. But it's new to this franchise. Initially, I was very skeptical of this setup. I mean, 3 separate seasons following 3 separate Midnight Society groups? I don't know. The Are You Afraid of the Dark revival series actually had a 3-part episode just following the Midnight Society around, and if you recall from my own ranking, I wasn't the biggest fan of that episode. Controversial opinion, I know. But my worries were quickly calmed for a myriad of different reasons. The prime candidates being that the writing was just good, the characters were good, the acting was good, more or less. The comedy was just fast and snappy, and the show just had a real sense of style to itself. And when shit could get scary, they got scary. It wasn't without its faults, however. Obviously, not every joke was a winner. Some fell just completely flat. Also, moments here and there felt a bit contrived, and by and large, every single love subplot throughout all 3 seasons just did absolutely nothing for me, and kind of felt tacked on at a certain point. I mean, Season 3, these 2 characters, this shit is hardly built up. 3 seasons, 3 different stories, and 3 separate cast of characters. You know what that means. We gotta go over a lot before we can go into the ranking proper, so just sit tight for a moment.
Okay, cool. Well, if this is gonna be another long intro, do I have enough time to throw some chicken nuggets in the air fryer real quick, or what?
No, Artie, we're gonna speedrun this shit. Heads up, we're not gonna speedrun this shit. I don't know why I kept that line in there, because this is gonna be a long intro.
Okay, your funeral, pal.
Okay, so first up is Season 1, also known as the Carnival of Doom. We follow our main character Rachel as she moves into a new town and has trouble fitting in. However, slowly, thanks to her creepy sketches, the Midnight Society takes a liking to her and wants her to join, but first must pass a series of tests, with the final one being, well, to tell a scary story. And I just gotta say, I love how much weight and seriousness and mystery this incarnation of the Midnight Society is given. The entire episode kind of builds up to this one moment, so by the time we finally arrive here, it just really delivers. I'll go more into depth when we get to that particular episode within the ranking. But Rachel tells a story of a mysterious carnival that travels from town to town, secretly kidnapping kids. And when all is said and done, the carnival disappears along with everyone's memory of the carnival. She actually bases the story off a reoccurring dream she has. Just something to keep note of. But with that, she officially joins the Midnight Society. The other members consist of Graham, who you guys may recognize as the one kid from the It movies, who's a complete horror nerd despite being a somewhat scaredy cat and a complete germaphobe. Then there's Akiko, a blunt and straight-to-the-point type of person that is also a serious filmmaker. Also, her older brother's a cop and is semi-relevant to the story. And then there's Louise, a popular cheerleader archetype. And finally, Gavin, Rachel's main love interest. Not to typecast the guy or to reduce him down to that status, but really, that's all he is. These characters may fit the bill as the stereotypical horror archetypes. I mean, you got the nerd, you got the popular girl, you got the love interest, and so on and so on. However, Season 1 does a really good job with these characters. They don't subvert these archetypes in any way, but instead, they just make these characters really fleshed out and versatile, and they feel like real people? Crazy concept. I know. But after Rachel regales her story, soon enough the Carnival of Doom rolls up on their town and one of their mutual friends goes missing. So it seems like everything from Rachel's story is coming true, and now this gang has to get to the bottom of it. Season 1 is really good. It's easily the season I recommend to people who want a more darker and serious look at the franchise while also not losing its original spirit. Season 2, Curse of the Shadows, is one I recommend to people that like the first season of Stranger Things because, this is Stranger Things. This season opens with a kid going missing in the woods, and then their friends have to slowly piece together the mystery of what's truly going on and what kind of entity is behind all of this. Oh, yeah, and they even got their own version of the Upside Down in this season. I'm not saying any of this in a disparaging way, nor am I trying to insinuate that this show completely ripped off of Stranger Things. I'm just saying there's a couple of parallels here, but by and large, this season really is its own thing at the end of the day. But for a quick comparison point, yeah, it's like Stranger Things. But in this season, we follow our main character, Luke, who seems like a typical main character just trying to find his friend Connor, who disappeared at the very start of the season. His love interest is Hannah, who seems like the typical environmental activist archetype. And then there's her little brother Seth, who seems like the typical annoying little brother. But then there's also Jay, who seems like the typical nerdy type of geek. And finally Gabby, who seems like the typical straight A smarty nerdy archetype.
Why the fuck are you saying seems like so much?
Well, that's because at the beginning, I was really nervous about these characters. I championed Season 1 so much because they took these very stereotypical characters and just made them feel real. So at the start of Season 2, when we were getting introduced to all these characters, and they act very stereotypically, I got scared. Like, Jay and Graham is a great comparison. They're both horror-loving nerds. However, while Graham felt realized, Jay felt like a caricature of what a nerd is supposed to be. And same could be applied for the rest of the cast. However, as this season progressed, these characters changed. They grew up little by little and were given some layers of nuance to their characterizations. So in retrospect, it seems like this stereotyping of characterization at the start was a somewhat deliberate choice to further emphasize their growth throughout this season. And that's fucking awesome. However, there's one special character that I forgot to talk about in season 2. And that's motherfucking Sardo, baby. Holy shit, he's back. Yeah, he's not the original actor from the OG series, but I gotta give this man some props. He fucking nails Sardo. From the cadence to the delivery to everything in between. This is just Sardo again. And massive props to the writing. They didn't make him all serious and brooding or whatever. He's just as funny as he used to be, if not more so.
And this is a secure line? Okay. Be at the shop in 20, come around back, bring cash. Thank you.
My only problem is the fit. I mean, come on. OG Sardo had that drip on him, and not a lick of that swag was carried over into this series. But hey, I'd much rather have the character feel like the character than look like the character. Also, he's like a legit character who is pivotal to this season's story, and he also just has like some badass and heartwarming scenes, but we'll talk about that more when we get to those specific episodes. But the plot of season 2 is that there's a monster called the Shadow Man, that if you enter the woods after sundown, he places a curse on you, essentially allowing him to hunt you down and drag you away into this parallel shadow world called the Shadow House. That's what happened to Connor off rip. And these kids, while trying to find Connor, all accidentally get cursed and now must fight off the Shadow Man along with trying to find a way to break the curse and get Connor back at the same time. What makes the Shadow Man so scary is that he can just emerge from darkness anytime he wants once the sun goes down. And yeah, some simple lights are enough to send him running, but at the same time, he can just turn them off too. So simply sleeping with the lights on isn't gonna cut it. Your ass has to stay awake to turn them back on if he turns them off. But along the way, they must learn the origins of the Shadow Man to properly defeat him. And it's just all really good stuff. But you know what I like most about this season? They make the darkness a legit monster and a legit threat. So, in turn, I guess it's finally applicable to ask the age-old question of, are you afraid of the dark? It's really fucking cheesy, but I love how the title of the show finally means something for these episodes. It's great. And then you got season 3, known as Ghost Island. And yeah, I'm not a fan of this one. I don't want to give the impression that this is a bad season, because it's really not. It's below average at worst and just average at best. It's just that juxtaposed to the 2 prior seasons, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. Our characters this time around follow a friend group who go on vacation to an island where they find out that their hotel they're staying at has a haunted room, the dreaded Room 13. Many people have checked into this room, but none have ever checked out. Ooh. Yeah, turns out there's a ghost trapped in the mirror who got deceived by an old ex-lover and now just murks people on sight. There's more to this story, but it doesn't amount to too much, and trust me, we'll talk about them all soon enough. If you know what I'm saying. Our main character this season is Kayla, who is trying to get over her sister's death and is struggling with it. Actually, stopped holding Midnight Society meetings altogether because of her death. Then you got Ferris, who is like the comedic relief character, and that's all there is to his character. Summer's kind of in a similar boat. She's just the typical girl archetype with not much else going on. And then Max over here is actually a ghost from 1996 who didn't know he was a ghost, so there's that. And then there's Leo, who is the life of the party and totally gay.
Whoa, hey man, come on now. That's uncalled for.
No, I'm not saying this in a disparaging 2008 kind of way. I'm saying that this character is quite literally gay. There's actually kind of this whole subplot through the series where Max is trying to hint at the fact that he's a ghost to Leo, but the way Max phrases it kind of can be misconstrued in a way that sounds like he's trying to come out of the closet. So, you know, Leo thinks Max is interested in him. Meanwhile, Max is just having an existential nightmare. I actually like this subplot because it manages to be funny while also having some of the most genuine heartfelt moments in this entire season. Consider it a bright spot on season 3, which isn't saying much because in actuality, this whole subplot just amounts to like 3 really brief scenes. The rest of the season is just about trying to free the ghost from the mirror once they realize that she's not really all that evil and just kind of misunderstood. And that's really my problem. This entire season felt like it could have been condensed down into a 2-part episode and not stretched out into 3 episodes. And technically 4 episodes. I mean, look. Which leads me to my final point. How many rankings are there? Well, there's a total of 12 episodes, but I have to clarify 2 things. Typically on this channel, I rank 2 and even 3-parters as 1 entry. However, all 3 episodes in season 1 are labeled as either part 1, 2, or 3. And well, if I count them all as 1 entry, that just wouldn't be fair. Also, that would mean an entire season would just take up 1 ranking spot, and we can't be doing that. So each episode will get their own individual entry. On the flip side, Season 3's premiere episode isn't a 2-parter, but a combined episode using 2 different stories to make a 1.5-hour long episode. So I'll be splitting both of these up into their own individual entries within the ranking. Meaning, even though there is a total of 12 episodes in this series, I will be ranking a total of 13 entries. Guys, I apologize. I thought my Animorphs video had a long intro, but this one just might take the cake. Anyways, let's finish this once and for all. So please sit back and relax as I rank every episode in the Are You Afraid of the Dark Reboot series from worst to best. Enjoy. Starting off this list is an episode from season 3. I would say this is a shock, but if you actually watched my entire long-ass intro, it's not really. And yeah, we're gonna be talking about a lot of season 3 episodes down here at the bottom. Very unfortunate. This is also the second part of the first episode, so I guess its main focus is on further fleshing out these characters, which would be great if, you know, the characters actually had something to them. But then that's kind of it for this episode. The story mostly takes a backseat here, with only one final revelation getting attention towards the end. That being that Max finally finds out that he's a ghost. And it's a little confusing too. Like, in the prior episode, Max tells a story about a hotel worker that got stuck in room 13 and disappeared, right? Well, as it turns out, this ghost story Max tells is actually about himself. I guess he just forgot the memories of his death and told the story subconsciously or whatever, and this effectively acts as a twist. The show goes to great lengths to conceal the audience from possibly predicting this outcome, as when Max originally tells the story of his death, the character actor we see playing Max is completely different from his real-life counterpart, which I think just only aids in the confusion.
Maybe you're just dumb. You ever think about that?
Hey man, I'm not that dumb.
In your Lost Tapes video, you said you don't see the monster of Monterey, despite the monster clearly showing up at the very end.
No comment. Like, okay, at this point, we don't know exactly what's going on. We don't know if this mirror is like a portal to another world, if there's a ghost trapped in there, if it possesses people, or truly, what's going on. So, I respect the show for making a twist as effective as this one in terms of unpredictability. But at the same time, it's hard to exactly understand what is transpiring here. And you're completely free to call me a dumbass in the comments. I think I am in this case. But at the same time, you have to admit, this was kind of sloppy. And the episode wasn't already offering too much to begin with. So it was like a pothole in a road that just got bigger over time. And now we jump all the way back to the end of season 3 with the seasons and series final episode. And this might be a shock to see this episode placed so low. Don't get me wrong, it has its moments, but ultimately, I think it fails to capitalize on said moments. And before I go any further, I would just like to remind people that this is just an average episode. It's as good as it is bad. I know the prospect of making a ranking video and labeling it from worst to best. Some may view the lower ranking spots as outright bad episodes. And, I mean, yeah. In some scenarios, that's absolutely true. I mean, Dead Time Stories was kind of nothing but bad episodes. But for the sake of this series, that's not entirely true. I mean, let's start with the positives. This is a beautiful send-off for this season and this series in general. It's also rather climactic and action-packed, as everything that was built up throughout this season finally comes to a head. But the downsides? Okay. Throughout the entire third season, Kayla is dealing with the grief of losing her twin sister. I mean, there's flashbacks of these two in literally every episode. And with this season dealing with these kids communicating with the spirit world, it's kinda evident that these two sisters are going to reunite at some point. And they do, at the very top of this episode nonetheless. And it's really heartwarming and impactful and just so emotional, is what I would say if it was. Yeah, the whole season was kind of building to these two reuniting, and when it finally gets to that point, it feels kind of rushed. The emotions in this scene just don't land for me, and there's so many other things that this episode has to wrap up, so we ultimately don't spend enough time between these two sisters. The saving grace is that there's at least a cute little moment between the two at the very end, as Kayla decides to continue the Midnight Society in honor of her sister. I think that's a very pleasant way to wrap this season up. She didn't want to continue the Midnight Society because of her sister, and now she's decided to continue because of her sister. It's really sweet. Oh, yeah. Max also sacrifices himself to swap places with Kayla to get her out of the mirror, and this is treated with a lot of emotions that just don't feel earned. Max as a character just never felt like he got too close with the group, and realistically, by the time he sacrifices himself, the other characters have only known him for 3 days. It's like if I killed Artie 2 episodes after I introduced him. It wouldn't mean anything at that point.
Ha, it's cute that you think you can kill me. No, wait, stop. You proved your point.
They also do a thing that I just don't like in narrative work like this. So they free the ghost by making her captive, or ex-lover, who turned out to be the hotel manager all along, and her swap places. And everything goes back to normal. And what I mean by that is that all the people who have died over the years in room 13 just never died. So it undid everything, essentially creating an all-around happy ending, which I don't like. I feel like it devalues and kind of puts less weight on the whole concept of death within this story's world. That being said, season 2 kind of does the same thing, but it's handled significantly better there, and we'll talk more about it when we get to that point. So in the end, I think just more emphasis on certain emotional scenes would have worked wonders on this episode. But as is, it's just alright, but it does manage to have a sweet final send-off. And then we jump all the way back to the start of Season 3 with the very first episode, The Tale of Room 13.
A lot of Season 3 episodes so far.
Hey, I warned everybody at the start, this was my least favorite season. If there's one thing that made me hopeful for Season 3, it was this cold open right here at the very start of the episode. I mean, just talk about nailing this creepy, foreboding atmosphere. It's great. And then we get our ears assaulted with some Post Malone music right afterwards. In fact, I can't believe I haven't mentioned this yet, but Season 3 really likes to load up their episodes with modern pop music. And it's fine, but there's certainly a limit, and at certain spots, it feels like they're just trying to see how much music they can cram into an episode. I mean, I can just picture some executive producers sitting at a desk saying they need to put at least 3 more Blackpink songs in any particular episode. Maybe that's why this series ended. The music licensing fees just did them in. And yeah, I'm presenting all this as a negative, but like, it's a fun negative. It's something I can disown, but also laugh at. Like, once again, when this episode started on this creepy cold opening, and then we're treated to this chilling opening title card, and then, all of a sudden, I'm nodding my head along to some Post Malone, that shit is funny, and at least somewhat deliberate in this scenario. Right? The biggest strength this episode has in comparison to the other two Season 3 episodes that ranked below it is the power of retrospect, or lack thereof. You see, this episode introduces this new world and these new characters, and most importantly, the whole mystery of Room 13. Yeah, we all know that this kinda doesn't go anywhere worthwhile. But as far as this episode goes, in an isolated vacuum, this plot is really intriguing. It poses a curious moral question. Do I rank this episode independently of itself? Or do I rank this episode within regards to the overall season as a whole? My standpoint has constantly gone back and forth, but for right now, I'm ranking more on the independent side. And if I didn't, well, it would only be like one rank below where it currently stands, so it's not like a huge shift or anything like that. And honestly, any episode in Season 3, except for the Tale of the Teen Spirit, is kinda all interchangeable between one another, including the very next ranking spot. This is the last Season 3 episode in this ranking, and honestly, I like this one the best, mainly because it's the episode where we finally get all the answers to the mystery that's been slowly building up throughout this entire season. And the payoff isn't exactly great, or really all that satisfying, but it is most definitely something. Okay, just let me hear it.
What are you talking about?
Sorry, man. I just thought you were gonna say like a condescending insult or something like that.
Wow, man. You really think that low of me? Cause you're absolutely right. Your mother...
Yeah, I just unplugged him. But finally learning the origins of the mirror ghost called Lucina, and finding out that the hotel manager was the one who trapped her in a mirror all those years ago was pretty good. If a bit too long. The whole flashback goes on for a bit too long for my taste. It's interesting, but kind of messes up the pacing, especially when the episode is trying to tie up so many other loose ends and character arcs. And even then, they fumble a bit. I mean, Summer and Ferris becoming a couple? Who gives a shit? This was barely even built up. Hell, it barely even concludes. It's just a quick little line exchange at the end. But hey, at least the action in this episode is really good. Now, I know it may seem disheartening that all the episodes in Season 3 are right here at the bottom of the ranking. I don't know how Season 3 is regarded amongst the fanbase, but what I have learned on YouTube so far is that everything has their fans. I mean, I can point to a pail of garbage and say, that's literal garbage. And I would still get somebody in my comments saying how much they actually like garbage.
I mean, clearly so. These people watch you after all. Got him.
I'm not saying Season 3 is garbage, by the way. It's below average to average. But all I want to say to the Season 3 fans out there, I'm sorry. This really isn't necessarily a bad season. It's just that Season 2 and Season 1 are so much better. It had some tough competition from the jump, and unfortunately, just couldn't hang with the big boys. Finally, another season to talk about. And this time, we're going all the way back to Season 1 with its second episode called Opening Night. And just some quick context to refresh everyone. In the first episode, Rachel tells a story about the Carnival of Doom, and at the end of that episode, this seemingly made-up story comes true. So this second episode is all about the main cast of characters quite literally living out the story that she told in the previous episode. However, what I like about this episode is that it's not just these kids experiencing this stuff, but for real, which honestly would have been fine in and of itself. but there's an actual mission at play here, and therefore, actual stakes. Once again, they're trying to find their lost mutual friend Adam. So it acts like a little search and rescue mission while also just being mysterious overall. I mean, this story this random new girl told came true. Like, what the fuck's going on here? But all of them split off into pairings to go on their own adventures and uncover their own information, and face their own trial and tribulations. In essence, this is a good way to cover all possible scares and really utilize the carnival setting. You know, you get some good clown action and some good Ferris wheel almost malfunctioning stuff, which is almost an all too real fear of mine. Personally, I like to blame the Final Destination series for that one. But amongst all of this is the weakest link, and that's all of the Gavin and Rachel relationship stuff. It's weird how in this season all of these characters are great and fully realized, but when it comes to this relationship stuff, it's very by the numbers. I mean, if you have ever seen literally any Disney Channel movie relationship stuff, that's what we got here. Now, the caveat here is that this really doesn't take up too much screen time in the grand scheme of things, despite it being a somewhat central focus. But also, I can recognize that it gives this ending a little bit more weight, as in the end, the carnival manages to scoop up Gavin, and just like how the story goes, everyone but Rachel forgets about the carnival. So while I can scoff and roll my eyes at the milquetoast budding relationship stuff, it at least gives our main character by the end more precedence and determination to not let this carnival get away with what they're doing, because apparently Adam wasn't enough. You gotta get a love interest involved to really get the gears turning. Also, I just gotta point out that Gavin's dad kind of looks like Brandon Routh, you know, Todd from Scott Pilgrim, or Superman from Superman Returns. Wait, shit, that totally is Brandon Routh, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it literally is. But hey, at least your face blindness seems to be improving a little bit.
Cool to see him here, but like, this is literally it. This is his one and only scene, and it's super brief, so I guess rent was due that day and he needed some kind of work. No, that's mean. I apologize. Now, you may have noticed my lack of complaints with this episode, and yeah, that just goes to show the level of quality we're dealing with this ranking going forward. Finally, we get to talk about a Season 2 episode, and actually, it's the first episode of Season 2. And I think for that reason alone, you can sort of piece together why this is at the bottom of the Season 2 episodes in this list. If you recall from my intro, I pointed out how Season 2's characters at the start are written very stereotypically. And with this being the first episode, yeah, it doesn't bode well. The only character that is fully realized at this point in time in the story is Sardo. They really nail this character off bat. And trying to stay consistent with my reasonings, even though I know these characters get significantly better later on, and even knowing that these characters' stereotypical characterization is kind of the point, for the moment being, within the isolation of this episode, it's lacking. Except for Sardo.
Jesus Christ, we get it. Fucking marry him if you like him so much.
Hey, I totally would if you kept his swag from the OG series. But everything else in this episode is just fantastic. The introduction to the main storyline's mystery, the looming atmosphere that slowly builds throughout the episode, are all key signifiers showing that if this season tightens up these characters, this could be something truly special here. But as far as plot stuff goes, this episode is all about our main cast of characters trying to figure out where their buddy Connor is, which promptly gets them all cursed. I mean, they took all the proper precautions to avoid this curse, but thanks to Jay's dumbass, it didn't matter. You see, if you're in the woods after sunset, you're cursed. And now the Shadow Man is going to hunt you down every night until he's got you. So they all just make sure that they exit the woods before 7:58 p.m. As Jay says, that's when sunset officially takes place. But it's actually not. Jay just got his information wrong. So when they barely get out before the allotted time and they think they're all safe and good, they're really not. Because some dude forgot about fucking time zones or some shit. Realistically, I can't put all the blame on Jay here. Most of it, yeah, it's this dude's fault. But all of it? Nah. Mainly because these kids, who know they have a strict time limit for how long they can be in the woods for, decide to enter said woods at like midday. Like, why not just go first thing in the morning? That would easily give you like a good 11 or 12 hours. Going midday only allots you like 3, maybe 4 hours max. I mean, it doesn't matter. These are all stupid nitpicks at the end of the day. Blowing it a little bit out of proportions for the sake of comedy. Not real criticism or anything like that. I'm not trying to be like fucking CinemaSins. Clearly, this storyline just needed these kids to get cursed to make the Shadow Man a more direct threat within the narrative. And yeah, it's a little contrived, but it doesn't take me out of the story, and that's all that really matters. So a little rocky start to the season, but overall, really good and just really promising for what's to come. This is essentially the halfway point within Season 2, so it's a lot of ramping up to the climactic final confrontation, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
It's true. I like to hurl out insults at the cashier before I place my Taco Bell order.
What?
You know, as a way to ramp up the customer experience.
That doesn't even make sense. There is a little bit of context here that I gotta explain first. In the prior episode, the gang uses the Book of Shadows to get Connor back. Or so they assume. Yeah, turns out they fucked up. And the spell they used accidentally made the Shadow Man impervious to light. You know, the one and only thing that kept these kids safe from the Shadow Man. So, with his newfound vulnerability, he decides to parade around as Connor as a means to infiltrate the group and take these people out one by one. Except he kinda sucks at it. In fact, the gang, or rather Gabby specifically, finds out real fast that Connor isn't actually Connor. And this is my main problem with this particular episode. The Shadow Man pretending to be Connor isn't really given enough emphasis or attention. And ultimately, not much really comes of it. There's not even really a moral quandary with the fact that they had to fight their friend that they've been searching for a while now. And I know I say this a lot in my videos, but this really needed some breathing room to feel a bit more significant. It lacks a little weight. But hey, in the end, we get Jay sacrificing himself to save his friends. And it really goes to show just how far his character has come in this series so far. Which started out as the stereotypical nerdy horror kid who was a little bit self-centered, is now one of the bravest and selflessness kids in the entire group. And normally, I would say this is the best part of the episode. I mean, it's heroic and it's emotional, but I really love all the stuff between Sardo and Seth. I mean, their chemistry is just fantastic, and they really bounce off of one another so well. I mean, sure, Jay sacrifices himself, but did he put on a magic show? Maybe he did. I mean, that kid did just disappear into thin air. But you know you're doing something right when I have a tough time deciding between which scene was better. Either the lighthearted humor between Sardo and Seth, or the emotional sacrifice of Jay. It's a great problem to have. So, we're still in Season 2, not really a surprise there, but what is surprising is that we're officially in the part of the ranking where it's kinda hard for me to say negative things about these episodes. Listen, I don't fuck around. When I say a show is good, it's good. Like, legit. My only problem with this episode is a nitpick, essentially. A somewhat comical one at that. You see, this is the second episode of the season, so it's all about these characters having their own individual run-ins with the Shadow Man. And near the end of the episode, they're like, oh shit, the Shadow Man is weak to light. Like, no shit he is. I thought everyone just knew that already. I mean, all the stories surrounding the Shadow Man said he was very vulnerable to light. And everyone's individual encounters with the Shadow Man, they used light to ward him off. And yet, somehow, they act like this is some major discovery when it's finally said out loud. Like, what? Now, I could do the typical YouTuber thing and blow this whole thing out of proportion and go on some 2-minute rant and kind of derail the whole video. But instead, I'll state my human response and simply say, that's kind of dumb, but whatever. It's really not a big deal. It's funny more than anything else. Maybe just a little oversight in the writing department. Or perhaps, more realistically, the writer really wanted to get through to the audience and explain that light does in fact hurt the Shadow Man. And once again, I only bring all this up in the first place because there's no other negatives in this episode. Despite this being the second episode, the characters are already growing and changing in front of our very eyes and are becoming fleshed out. And the mystery component is growing stronger by the second in this very episode, as we're constantly flashing back to what Connor experienced before he got dragged away. He was attempting to contact a kid named June, who passed away years prior, through a seance. So it answers a couple questions about Connor's character, but it also raises more questions surrounding this new character named June. Like, how did she die? Why is Connor trying to contact her? And how does all this tie into the Shadow Man? Oh, and on that note, the Shadow Man is fully integrated into this story now, and he is intimidating, to say the least. Yeah, a monster whose weakness is light doesn't seem so scary or intimidating, but nah, he's definitely scary and intimidating, despite the exploitable flaw. If episode 1 didn't grab you for whatever reason, I mean, it was a little slow comparatively, well, let me tell you, episode 2 will get you hooked and excited for what's to come in this very season. Finally jumping back to season 1 real quick with its final episode, Destroy All Top Hats, which is a great episode with a horrible title. I mean, out of all 3 episodes in season 1, it's easily the worst. I mean, the first episode title, Submitted for Approval. It's sleek, it's elegant, it's self-referential, and it's a little meta. It's the start of a reboot series, so it's almost like the title of the episode itself is being submitted to the fans for approval. And then you got episode 2, Opening Night. Nothing crazy, but straight into the point and simple. And then episode 3, Destroy All Top Hats. Ew. Like, I get it. The gang is fed false information that Mr. Top Hat's power stems from his top hat. So they must destroy it to destroy him. And it could also allude to the fact that if they destroy Mr. Top Hat, then the traveling carnival will cease to exist, and therefore all of his different incarnations. But at the same time, it's just a title that doesn't really sound good, to be honest.
Dude, do you think anyone actually gives a shit about any of this?
I give a shit. But being a season finale, it's got all the classics, like just being climactic as hell, and all the storylines wrap up succinctly and in a satisfying way. There's betrayal, there's heartbreak, and for better or for worse, there's love.
Definitely for the worse.
Yeah, unfortunately, still the only bright spot on this episode truly is the romantic subplot between Gavin and Rachel. It's just not that special. But once again, thankfully doesn't get too much attention. And I gotta admit, being a season finale, I'll allow it. And the whole thing ends with the kids, and more specifically Rachel, saving the day. And then that's it.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. You're leaving out hella details here.
Well, wait, what do you mean?
Like, you know, you didn't properly review this episode.
No, I am, but I see your misunderstanding here. You see, I rank and review every single episode, but what I don't do is recap every single episode. Because recapping isn't reviewing. And if you just want that, then you can watch the episodes yourself or read a synopsis online.
Damn, you really showed those people, you know, arguing with yourself and whatnot.
Don't break the illusion! And just to show how much love and attention was really put into this reboot for fans, at the very end, before Adam stumbles across the Midnight Society, Gavin is gearing up to tell a story he calls The Return of the Ghastly Grinner. It's a cute little Easter egg, and this show actually has a couple, more so in season 2 than anywhere else. But it's not overbearing, and if you're a fan, you're gonna get a kick out of a couple of them. No real points in pointing them all out because, well, I want people who decide to check out this series to still be surprised by some of them. And now we hop right on back to Season 2. And this is finally the episode where we get all the answers and what we have been searching for this entire season. Like, who is the Shadow Man? What is his origins? And who is June? And how does she tie into all of this? And it's always cathartic to watch a show that has a central mystery component that has an episode that reveals all the answers, more or less. I mean, Gravity Falls is like the prime example of this. I would go into details, but I don't really want to spoil anything, despite the show being off air for almost a decade now. Fuck. I'm getting old. But we find out that June was the daughter of a lighthouse keeper who lost her life trying to turn the lighthouse back on once the town had to shut it down. And the father, stricken by grief and guilt, decides to use the Book of Shadows in an attempt to revive her, but he fucks up. Yeah, he says the wrong spell and accidentally summons the Shadow Man who uses his body as a vessel. Seems like nobody knows how to use the Book of Shadows properly, and they all end up fucking up royally trying to use it. I mean, to be fair, Sardone warns everyone of this and says not to even touch the book, so it's really on the characters at that point. But it's a backstory that's equal parts interesting and tragic, and actually somewhat paints the Shadow Man in a slightly sympathetic light. I mean, not entirely though. It's not like the dad is alive underneath the Shadow Man or anything like that. As far as the show goes, it's pretty much implied that the dude is just dead, and his body was used in a more sacrificial way than a kind of vessel way. But the origins of how this monster came to be, that's where I think the audience can somewhat sympathize with the plight. I mean, it's nothing new. There's a lot of horror movies and horror literature out there that begin with someone trying to possibly bring back their loved ones from the dead.
Oh, like Five Nights at Freddy's.
I mean, you're not wrong, but it's just a weird reference point for you to have. But this finally answers the question on why Connor was trying to contact June beyond the grave. Plain and simple, he was trying to see if her story could shed some light on how to defeat the Shadow Man. And yeah, despite both Connor in the past and the Midnight Society in the present finally learning the origins of the Shadow Man's creation, it doesn't shed any insight onto how to actually kill the Shadow Man. Although, the gang does conduct a spell that they think works on disposing of the monster and getting their friend back, but as we know, it's quite the opposite in every which way, and it doesn't end in some ambiguous way. The episode is keen on showing you that, yeah, that ain't Connor. And normally, I love myself a good, ambiguous ending, but at the same time, the prospect of this Connor being an imposter is an interesting way to end this episode that desperately had me wanting to watch the next episode almost immediately. So, it can work either way. It's really all in the execution, or for the storytelling purposes. Finally, we skip all the way to the final episode in Season 2, which some may have suspected that this episode was going to rank number 1 overall, and it very well could have. Honestly, anything in the top 3 are pretty interchangeable, but for the moment being, I feel like this works best at number 3. I might regret it later, but for right now, that's what I'm rocking with. At the start of this episode, there's a lot of factors at play that really makes this work that's I can't properly go into at this very moment. Plain and simple, the previous episode ends in such a way to make the start of this episode really dire. And if you noticed, the previous episode has yet to appear on this list, and I don't want to spoil those story moments just yet. So, for the time being, just refer back to this point in the video when I talk about that episode. But needless to say, this opening segment with Luke all alone is so helpless, and you really feel how defeated he is in his current situation. That is until he witnesses a flashback where we get to see the original Sardou, and oh my god, it's beautiful. Okay, fan service can get a bad rap sometimes, and well, rightfully so. When it's overdone, it just feels like pandering. But when done right, it's beautiful. Go-to example is Better Call Saul. There's moments here and there that reference Breaking Bad, but it's always non-intrusive and actually in service to the overall story. My lukewarm take is that Better Call Saul is better than Breaking Bad, but it doesn't really matter because they're both amazing shows. But that's what the OG Sardo's appearance is. It's not just some cameo for the fans to blow their loads over, although I certainly did. But within this point in the story, it's actually kind of emotional. Once again, more on that later. But in a meta-contextual kind of way, Reboot Sardo at the start of the season actually kind of alludes to the fact that the OG Sardo is his grandfather, which at that point felt like a cute little wink to the audience, but now has fully blossomed into this scene right here. But enough talking about this one particular scene. How does the rest of the episode play out? Well, it plays out like most other season finales. It's action-packed, climactic as hell, and all their friends are saved at the end of the day, and everything goes back to normal. It's just a standard happy ending. And perhaps too happy of an ending. Yeah, okay, somehow time travel is involved in this episode, and the gang managed to go back in time to save June from ever accidentally dying, and therefore the Shadow Man from ever being created. But for good measure, they managed to kill him by getting the lighthouse back up and running. And, you know, after seeing this monster terrorize these kids all season, I would like to see him burn, even if his presence is a bit of a paradox at this point. But everything goes back to normal. June in the present is now the mayor, and all those kids who were taken away by the Shadow Man over the years are now adults, seemingly living their best life. Which kind of devalues this scene right here. It's like, oh my god. That little kid died. Oh, wait, no. She's an adult now. Just chilling. Now, I gave season 3 a lot of shit for wrapping up things too nicely, if you recall. Basically, all the people in Room 13 who perished ended up never perishing in the first place. And, well, season 2 kind of does the exact same thing, but I'm willing to give it a pass just because it's done with a little more heart. We actually got to know these characters, and it felt like a good chunk of this season's story had an increased emphasis on these characters. So while I still think the final outcome is a little cheesy, and I would have much preferred the bittersweet ending of all these deaths staying permanent, I can't help but to smile. And the whole season ends with a proper Midnight Society session, which we haven't actually gotten one thus far in this season. Also, Seth is now a part of the society. I mean, there's a whole subplot of him wanting to join the Midnight Society that played out in the background throughout every single episode. So it's just great to get this kind of resolution finally. A near perfect way to cap off this season and this story. There's minor criticisms here and there, but I can easily overlook those aspects. And now we go all the way back to season 1, and to my shock, it's the first episode of not just this season, but this series. That's right, the first episode to kick off this entire Reboot series just fucking knocks it out of the park. And I'll admit it, maybe my enjoyment of this episode had to do with the amount of skepticism I came into this series with. I mean, let's be honest, a modern, darker, more serious reboot of a 90s kids show, I didn't exactly have faith in it. Also, I go into every series like completely raw. I watch every single episode and rank every single episode, and then I go online and see stuff. That way my opinion is my own and it's not swayed by stuff I see online.
You do research? Doesn't really show in your videos.
But there's so much to like about this episode, as it does a really good job of not just setting up and introducing these characters, but it also does a really good job of building up the mythos of the whole Midnight Society. Yeah, the Midnight Society this time around carries a lot of weight. This shit is taken seriously. I mean, to get to the scary storytelling spot. Jesus Christ. I mean, to even get to the campfire, you gotta take a fucking boat. But I love it so much. I love the secrecy that surrounds the group. I mean, Rachel has to do a series of tests to get in, both in terms of just horror knowledge and opinions, but also in terms of loyalty. Before the group reveals who they are, they task Rachel with her final task, to create a truly scary story. But they also tell her that she can't tell a soul about the Midnight Society. So later, that next day, Gavin kind of tests her, asking her all sorts of questions, trying to get her to spill information on the Midnight Society. But our girl never cracks. It's a really small moment, but I really do like it a lot. And it just further exemplifies how serious this incarnation takes the Midnight Society. I mean, the two OG crews took this shit pretty seriously too. Well, not really the revival crew. They were considerably more chill than the OG Society. And even then, the OG Society were a little lax here and there. It was really just Gary's ass who treated it like life and death, which came off as a bit cartoony, thanks to just the tone of that show. But this show also does a really good job of easing original fans into this reboot. I mean, sometimes when it comes to nostalgia, people can be stubborn. They don't like change, they don't like the new, but in their defense, most reboots suck. It's besides the point though. But I think this episode can successfully get old fans on board with the reboot because the first half of this episode is essentially the reboot. It's the introduction to all these characters after all. But the second half plays out like a classic episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? I mean, Rachel introduces the title of her story, throws some sand into the fire, and then it's just a classic story about a scary carnival, which when viewed for the first time does work in a standalone story, but by the end of the episode, when the story Rachel told starts to come true, all of a sudden all the pieces fall in place. You realize that this episode is combining aspects of the first half of this episode and the second half of this episode to become one main storyline. In essence, it's the perfect mix of what the reboot will be and what the original series was. If that makes sense to anyone.
It doesn't.
Okay, well, I tried. So it's an amazing episode and a truly fantastic first episode. More reboots need to study this episode to show people how it's done because I was nervous heading into this series, but after watching this episode, I became excited to watch the rest of this series. And that's all because of just one episode. And for our number one spot, we are hopping back to season 2 with its second to last episode, The Tale of Midnight Magic. And hot damn. You know how in Empire Strikes Back, just everything goes wrong? Like, the movie ends with our heroes just failing. But that's what makes that movie so good. Just the dire situation at hand, and all the sacrifices, and the utter failure makes that movie one of the best in the series. And all these traits can be applied to this very episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
I like episode 1 the most.
No, you don't. You like the pod racing and the Darth Maul fight at the end, but those two elements don't make it a good movie.
Gonna piss a lot of people off with that comment.
But this is in fact the episode where everything fails, as these kids finally discover a way to kill the Shadow Man. Basically, it's just a series of concentrated lights blasted through this crystal that produces a light that can actually kill him. But the only problem here is that the Connor Shadow Man snitches on all these kids' parents, essentially make them all grounded. And yeah, in the grand scheme of things, this hurdle of being grounded is very easily dealt with. I mean, all the kids just sneak out pretty easily anyhow, but it adds a nice little bit of personal stakes to the story. I mean, even if they succeed and kill the Shadow Man, they're still gonna have to go home to their parents after sneaking out. And I mean, the Shadow Man's scary and whatnot, but nothing's scarier than getting in trouble with your parents when you're at that age. But despite their elaborate plan and pretty good execution, they all fail. And one by one, everyone, except for Luke, die. Well, they don't actually die. The Shadow Man just banishes them to the Shadow Realm, but it still leaves Luke alone and perilous. Oh, yeah, except for Sardo. Sardo actually just fucking dies. Like, straight up. The sheer balls on this show to literally kill off a beloved series regular since the 90s is crazy. And I'm glad they did it. It's that, oh shit, moment in this episode. It's that moment that snaps you back to reality and reminds you yet again that, yeah, this Shadow Man is a legit menace, and there is some dire consequences for attempting to kill him. It does beg the question of, why did the Shadow Man kill Sardo, but not the other kids? And, well, I think there's two interpretations here. One being that the Shadow Man never really saw these kids as a real threat. I mean, they're just kids after all. And perhaps his hubris got the better of him. Meanwhile, Sardo, despite his personality, actually does know about the dark arts and has the magical know-how to properly rid the world of the Shadow Man. So perhaps the Shadow Man saw him as an actual threat that needed to be dealt with. Also, he could have thought that if he sent Sardo to the Shadow Realm, he would have figured out a way to break out given his magical background. The other interpretation is that June's father is still somewhat in control. Not directly, but maybe subconsciously, and therefore could never allow the Shadow Man to directly kill these kids, because he knows the pain of losing a child. But a full-grown adult? Yeah, fucking wipe him out. Personally, I like both readings concerning Sardo's death, and honestly, I think a combination of the two is my favorite interpretation. But this is why this OG Sardo flashback in the next episode is so impactful, because the context of that scene is that Luke is scared and alone, and with Sardo dead, he tries to contact him from beyond the grave, and Reboot Sardo shows him a memory he had of his grandfather to aid him in support. But that's also why I couldn't talk about that then, because I didn't want to reveal the fact that Sardo dies until I talk about this very episode. Yeah, sure, the final episode kind of ruins this sacrifice a bit when they undo everything and he's alive again, but once again, we're ranking these episodes independently. And within defense of the last episode, Sardo implies that he was aware of all the timeline altering shenanigans, which is pretty badass. But yeah, this episode ends in a completely hopeless fashion. Everyone has their great sacrificial moments. I think the most touching is Seth's. It's, well, it's just emotional. But it leaves Luke scared, panicked, emotional, and just ready to give up. And just knowing that there's one episode left after this one, it really had me thinking that this season might just end up with all the heroes just straight up losing. Of course, that doesn't happen, but it's within great credit to this very episode's ability to make me believe that that might be a legit outcome. That's how dire this episode can make you feel watching it. And that's amazing. And that's why it's number one. So that was the Are You Afraid of the Dark reboot series, and it was significantly better than I ever thought it would be. I will easily recommend to you guys to check out season 1 and 2, and if you got the time for it, check out season 3. Why not? It's not good, but it's also not bad. But man, does it feel good to finally rank every single Are You Afraid of the Dark episode from every single series. But honestly, who would have known a dark reboot of a children's horror show from the 90s could be good?
Do you want to see if another similar reboot series holds up as well as this one?
Sure. What did you have in mind? Oh, fuck.